Heavenly Father, we pray your blessing upon this meeting. We pray your blessing upon the borough and all its citizens, and especially those who are unwell at this time. We ask your blessing for all organisations within the borough, and we ask your blessing for all who make up the council chamber. We ask your blessing today and every day, and especially in this new year. Amen.
Please be seated. Please note that this meeting is being filmed for publication on the Council's website. Therefore, by entering the chamber and sitting anywhere except in the public gallery, you are consenting to being filmed and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings for broadcasting and training purposes, as your images cannot be removed post-recording. If you're a member of the public and do not wish to have your image captured, you should sit in the appropriate seats in the public gallery at the rear of the chamber. If you have any queries regarding this, please speak to one of the council staff after the meeting. Thank you. Are there any apologies?
No apologies, no.
Any declarations of pecuniary interest? Are the minutes of the last meeting held on the 21st of November 2018 agreed? Does the Chief Executive or the Leader have any announcements?
Madam Mayor, I have no announcements, but I understand the Leader of the Opposition, Councillor Morden, does.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just have a very brief announcement, but I just wanted to let members know that tonight will be my last meeting of the full council as Leader of the Opposition and as Leader of my group. It's been a great privilege to serve you all, and I look forward to doing so as my ward and with my ward colleagues, but I shall no longer be serving the group as of next Monday, when there will be an election taking place, so another announcement will be made shortly after that. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
And all those involved with the New Year's Day, the parade in New Year's Day, London. Congratulations on becoming joint force. and thank you for all the work you've done in that. I would also like to thank Councillor Sally Kenny for the Christmas Day lunches that she provided to the most vulnerable people in the world. Thank you, Councillor Sally Kenny, for that. The next item is the public questions. You have a list in front of you of 38 questions from members of the public. Answers have been provided by the appropriate cabinet member. Each questioner has the right to ask further supplementary questions. Please make the question brief and not a statement. I will call each person's name in turn based on the order the questions were received. If you would like to ask a supplementary question, please indicate to me clearly, and I will ask you to come to the seat marked public questions in the front of the public gallery. We will go through as many as we can in the 15 minutes allowed. Please also note that your microphones will be operated for you, and please speak clearly. So firstly, Matthew Conway. Is Matthew Conway present? Tom Kelly?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor, for your answer. Can I ask Councillor please to clarify in what circumstances alternatives to plastic, such as glass or metal, would clearly not be appropriate, and just as a supplementary, wood is often an alternative to plastic. I find it hard to see why that would not be appropriate.
Thank him for his follow-up. I think that anybody who's been to any outdoor events across the borough can see that having glass at those events would obviously not be appropriate, and so we would work with the events organisers to try and provide alternatives. However, all single-use implements, whether they're made of wood or whatever, if they are just single-use and are not reused, then they take up a large amount of resources to produce them if they're going to get thrown away immediately afterwards. So we have to use our common sense on these things, as I'm sure he will understand, but we can't possibly have events where broken glass is scattered around, or where tins and metals can be used as implements. It would clearly create a public order problem.
Do we have Stuart Thomas present? Gemma Davis? Laura Knapp? Joyce Hoontain? Ravi Nathan? Andrew Klein? John Tippett Cooper? Barry Smith? Shipra Gupta? Narji Dresselers? Samantha MacArthur? Suzanne Gale?
Hi, I'd just like to ask in relation to not returning bins to properties, how often this would have to happen, either in a percentage-wise or every week, for the council to take this seriously and take further action rather than just report it to Veolia?
I'd like to thank Ms. Gow for the supplementary, original question and the supplementary question. This is something that we discuss regularly with Veolia. They know what should be happening, we know what should be happening, and they need to be getting that message across to their operatives. They do have briefings, retraining sessions, and they go out and observe as well. So we are working on it. It should be returned to the curtilage of the property. Wheelie bins, and we're aware of the problems that causes it is not returned. So we are pressing them on that. They know that's the case, and I sometimes go around and follow refuse trucks, not as a regular habit, but I do go around and follow, and I am watching that as well to make sure that it happens.
Thank you, Councillor Grant. Thank you. Tamara Caller. Ursula Faulkner. John Braithwaite. Richard Finlayson. Pippa Maslin.
Thank you. At the last count, 21 principal authorities, 9 parish or town councils, and indeed the London Assembly and the Mayor of London formally declared a climate emergency and are busy reviewing their carbon reduction plans accordingly. Thus, I feel that it is extremely insufficient and disappointing for Merton Council to simply agree that the existential threat that we face is an emergency, and to say that it will simply consider its actions in support of the authorities that I've cited in my question. So my question is, why stop short of a formal declaration of a climate emergency?
I thank you for your question and for your supplementary. We're not saying that we will stop short of saying that, we are just saying we will review that and come back in due course.
Thank you. Do we have Julian Holiday?
Thank you. I would just like to ask why complaints of failures to provide services such as proper street cleaning are simply reports and not complaints.
I'd like to thank Mr. Holiday for his question and supplementary. The idea of a report is that they can be rectified. If it's not rectified, then it escalates to a complaint, I would say. But because the idea of our reporting system is that things and the Veolia have an opportunity within a timescale to rectify the situation. So it's reporting it and rectifying it. If it's not rectified, then it becomes a complaint.
Thank you. Do we have Eve Cohen? Yes.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to the Cabinet Member for Finance for the response to my initial question. I'd like to ask, why did Veolia not appear to have the reference numbers and the corresponding report locations for reports made online, and why do I have to keep reporting the same issues again and again before they get cleared? For example, street cleaning and leaf mulching gutters and blocked drain roads.
I'd like to again thank her for her follow-up. Clearly, the subject of the meeting following surrounds the issue of street cleaning and reporting. It'll be an opportunity for us to talk about the improvements that happened on the streets as a result of moving to wheeled bins and replacing the black bin bags that used to split open. However, when there are problems, we do need a reporting mechanism, and we are working with the provider to change that over time to respond to the changing needs. Clearly, it appears now that the greatest demand is to report things like fly tipping, which may have been different to how it would have been in the past. So as the system, as the implementation of the contract continues, therefore we will need to evolve and amend the reporting system as well. And we'll continue to do that.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you. Hugo Forshaw. Dan Good.
Councillor Brunt, just responding to your answer to my question, thank you. Just responding to your question, if the neighbourhood client team and Veolia's environmental managers regularly monitor litter hotspots in the borough, why have residents like myself been reporting the same areas week in, week out since Veolia took over the waste contract 22 months ago? Is this not proof enough that the safeguards you mentioned and the service in general are not adequate?
I think Mr. Good for his question, a supplementary question. We are working to improve the service, and that is why we're taking on 3 more street cleansing sort of monitoring officers from the council's point of view, in addition to the 3 client management officers we have already and the 2 extra ones we took on. That will put 8 into the team. So the monitoring and performance management of the contract is something we take seriously, and that will give us the opportunity to monitor that more. I am aware of some of the issues that he's referring to on Havens Road, living not far from there myself. So I do see it, but we are working on that, and Havens Road comes with specific problems because the wheel bin service will not be appropriate, or is not appropriate to everyone there, and so we're trying to find solutions for that.
Thank you. Luke Taylor. Leslie Sorrell. James Oliver. Oh, sorry.
My original question was, how does Veolia sort of supervise the work of its staff? And you replied that each crew is supervised appropriately by an environmental manager. I still have to keep reporting these sites. I'm wondering how many environmental managers you have, and how do we recognise them?
I'd like to thank Ms. Sorrell for her original question and the supplementary. Veolia's environmental management team are sometimes out monitoring people. They can't monitor all the teams all the time, and the nature of managing a remote workforce is something I'm familiar from my previous jobs as well. So they won't necessarily be recognisable to the public, but they are certainly recognisable to the teams, and they're out there and they are working to improve the performance of those out in the street.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you. Chief Executive has remembered we've just got 4 minutes left here for these questions. So, James Oliver.
In your reply to my question, you say that under the terms of the proposed lease, the people of Merton will be able to enjoy Morley Park's facilities as if the land belonged to the council. Please can you confirm that what you mean by this is that under the lease, the public will have the same degree of access as envisaged under the freehold transfer, namely access to all parts of the park at all times, except the playing fields when they are in use?
Thank you very much for your question and for your supplementary. And the answer to that is absolutely yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor. Christopher Dizer. Julian Shawbray. Alan Kerr. Emma Sutton. Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you very much for the reply to my question. But it does seem pretty obvious that the council is acting late and in arrears on this whole Veolia contract, and the news that additional staff are being employed is excellent. However, the management of this contract seems to have been very sloppily undertaken, And my supplementary question is, how many, what are the plans for enforcing in the next 3 months or so all the failed pick up the litter and tidiness that have not been done in the last 6 months or more?
I'd like to thank Mr. Kerr for his original question and the supplementary. With the employment of more resources or more people out there able to go and inspect when street cleanliness issues are reported, then I'm anticipating there will be an improvement in that and the response rate and the contract management there. When it comes to fly tips, which is something close to many of our hearts, at the moment, we're, for those that are reported online or through our call centre, we're experiencing an 89% success rate of them being cleared within the timescale specified in the contract. So I believe that has been an improvement over the last few months, and it will continue to improve.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you for your question. We've got time for just one more, and we're calling Emma Sutton. Richard Shalito. Suzanne Brokoff.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to thank the Cabinet Member for his answer to my question. But with only like 1.6% year-on-year falling car sales, new car sales, and electric cars still at only about 6.8% of market share, will the Cabinet Member agree with the general sentiment that the hike in CPZ charges is nothing but yet another stealth tax on those residents of Merton who have cars, irrespective of how much walking, running or cycling they do?
Thank you. I'd like to welcome Councillor Grocott back to the Council chamber after an enforced departure of former Councillor Grocott. In terms of that, I don't actually agree with the comments she has made in relation to this. You know, as a council, we do see that there is an emergency in terms of air quality in the borough and in terms of emissions, and we do want to encourage greater use of electric cars. It's now at 6.8%, but it is now actually growing very rapidly within this borough. We believe that the proposals made are fair and actually will help and assist in actually the reduction of car usage in this borough, which we think is absolutely paramount, and encourage more people to use public transport, and also in terms of the take-up of zero emissions cars, electric cars, and also as well people to use their bikes. Thank you.
Thank you, we now move on to item 6. Councillors' questions to the members. I will read out each member's name in the order here in the supplementary agenda and invite you to ask a supplementary question. Please ensure all supplementary questions are brief and not mistaken, and we will get through as many as possible in 15 minutes allocated. So, firstly, Councillor Chapman.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I do have a supplementary question, and it is as follows. Is there a plan of action for the remainder of Merton schools to complete the quality mark with the All Together program?
I thank Councillor Chong for his original and his supplementary questions. Schools volunteer to take part in the All Together program, but I am delighted to say that we've received funding from the Department of Education so that another group of schools in Merton will be taking part in our program this year.
Thank you. Councillor Barrow.
Thank you to the Cabinet Member for her response. At the last meeting of this Council, all parties backed practical steps to improve social mobility in the borough. With this in mind, will she commit to establishing a working group to ensure that the social mobility pledge is properly adopted and the commitments made are delivered?
Yes, I agree with what you just said. Thank you for your supplementary question. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you to the Cabinet Member for his answer. Would the Cabinet Member outline the resident engagement and the consultation process that has been carried out in the regeneration process?
I'd like to thank Councillor Butler for his supplementary. There's been extensive consultation conducted over a number of years by Clarion on all three estates impacted by the regeneration, High Path, Ravensbury and Eastfields. It is also as well about to embark on further consultations in terms of High Path in relation to phase 2 of development. I believe that alongside the 10 pledges that Clarion Housing have made, that it has been extensive and it has involved extensive engagement with local residents. This regeneration will result in a transformation of all three estates. It's something I welcome, but resident engagement is actually key to making regeneration successful. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bakari.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I appreciate the answer that's been given by the Cabinet Member, and I hope Merton Council will become a champion against Islamophobia, as has the Labour-run councils Redbridge and Newham, who have accepted the definition. According to hate monitoring group Tell Mama, Muslim women bear the brunt of that 40% rise in hate crime in Britain. As a Muslim woman myself, who has been racially abused, we need discrimination addressed for women like myself. Can the Council commit to reporting back to the full Council on your considerations, either by the next Council meeting or the one after that?
I thank Councillor Bakari for her original and also for her supplementary question. I share your concerns with me. As you are aware, this Council takes very serious and robust action for any homophobia actions that are taken against our residents in this country. We have definitely increased our hate crime strategy. We looked at the community cohesion strategy. We monitor it from time to time, and I know that it hasn't been, the definition has not been a widespread affair by the government. It has been done by one borough in the whole of London, but I do feel that we will do everything possible that we can as an authority to make sure that this action is embedded as we did in the hate crime strategy.
Councillor Kenny.
Thank you to the Cabinet Member for her reply. My supplementary, is it known? It is known that care leavers are more likely to be not in education, employment or training. What is the Council doing to address this issue?
I'd like to thank Councillor Kenny for her question and her questions. We have a dedicated My Futures team here in Merton, including a youth employability and employer engagement officer to work directly with these children. As an employer ourselves, we work to provide apprenticeships, work experience, mock interviews and even work trials before applications open. So we do a lot of work ourselves, and we also work with partners including people at Verde to make sure that job opportunities are also available to our young people and caregivers. Thank you.
Councillor Burton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. May I ask the Cabinet Member for Regeneration with regard to the £5,000 ward grants that were meant to go out to every ward across the borough in advance of the local elections on last May. Will he apologise to the residents' associations and the members of this council and every resident in Merton for having failed to allocate any of that funding from the £5,000 ward grants? Will he apologise for the misleading statements they gave in the run-up to the local election? Will he agree to meeting the ward councillors of every ward across Morden and Wimbledon to make sure this time the £15,000 which they're talking about is now properly allocated and invested in our boroughs?
our borough. I'd like to thank Councillor Gretton for his supplementary. I completely and utterly disagree with his comments that he has just made. To Council, it was 5,000 that was introduced by a Labour administration. Council the other week has agreed to have 15,000 over 3 years. That's something I think we welcome in terms of the expenditure. Clearly this was the first year this was introduced. There are lessons to be learned in terms of that process, which we have actually brought forward in terms of this year. I am willing to meet with any people who have got issues specifically with the SIL money with a view to resolution. But instead of knocking this council, we should be thanking this council to actually empowering local residents and giving them the ability to spend money in their own wards. Councillor Gretton might not welcome it, I certainly do. Thank you.
Councillor Manley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to Cabinet Member for an answer regarding the success of Wimbledon Harris Academy. Given the recent release of the unvalidated GCSE results, primary school performance tables and pupil progress measures, could the Cabinet Member update us on Merton's relative position nationally in relation to progress at Key Stage 2 and Key Stage 4, please?
I'd like to thank Councillor Raynes for his question. The results are unvalidated, but currently we have our primary schools being ranked 8th nationally in progress for reading, 23rd for writing, and 6th in mathematics. And for attainment, we ranked 36th nationally. And for the secondary schools, we are ranked 8th nationally for progress and 27th for attainment. But we wait for the full result to come and look forward to that. Thank you.
Thank you. We now move on to item 7, the strategic theme of sustainable communities with a focus on air quality. We will begin with the Councillor's strategic theme questions, and I will follow the same procedure as the previous item. So firstly, Councillor Kenny.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I thank the Cabinet Member for the response, and I would like to also ask, could you please outline what other initiatives are being run to improve childhood health and wellbeing? Thank you.
I thank him for his question and for his supplementary question. Childhood obesity was one of the Health and Wellbeing Board's priorities 2 years ago, and that's followed through in our work on diabetes this year. We'll be publishing the Diabetes Framework, which was launched from the Diabetes Street Programme in the spring, and that will coincide with the launch of the Merton Mile, where school children will be encouraged to do a mile of activity around Fix March. We're also supporting Fizz-Free February, where we're encouraging people to give up fizzy drinks for the month of February, and that ties into the local authority declaration we signed in December on sugar, which seeks to combat sugar across everyone.
Councillor Williams.
Well, Madam Mayor, I think I'd like to thank the Cabinet Member for his answer, but it doesn't really address the question which in particular related to memory inquiries and why I raised the question in the first place. So my supplementary is, does the Cabinet Member realise how impotent councillors seem if whilst there's an alleged turnaround time of 10 working days from members' inquiries, it's taken 8 days to even log the member inquiry, and secondly, it's still taking 20 or more days to get a proper reply from public spaces. What's he going to do about it?
I'd like to thank Councillor Williams for his first question, and I'm sorry because they didn't fully answer, my answer didn't answer that. In terms of speeding up response times, we have already seen that there is an increase in resource going into that area, and we anticipate improving that turnaround time. But I also would point him at the initiative that I've introduced, which is to have ward council workshops across collection days, and the Friday collection day, which will include West Barnes, Lower Morden, Cannon Hill, and the other one in that has Friday collection for refuse. It's slipped my mind at the moment. We'll be having that in 2 weeks' time, and that is an opportunity for particular areas from councillors to express their concerns. We're meeting with officers, with Veolia, and all together on that. So I'd encourage them to take part in that when we get through to the Monday collections and the Tuesdays. The Wednesday and Thursday collection meetings have already happened. So we are taking steps to improve response times and to make sure that members' concerns are addressed.
Councillor Fairclough.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to thank the Cabinet Member for the answer to his question, although I'm slightly surprised that he notes that when bulky waste free collection was introduced, there was no impact at all on incidences of fly tipping, and wonder for how many years after the implementation of that scheme the Cabinet continued to approve council publicity saying that the rationale for bulky waste collection was in fact the reduction of fly tipping, and in fact why that was if it wasn't the case. Thank you, Madam.
Well, thank you, Councillor Fairclough, for your question supplementary. This was a question of one when I wasn't around at the time when it introduced as free, and it used to be charged when I was the chair of environment before. So I can't answer the specifics of how long the publicity was used, but certainly I would re-emphasise the fact that councils across the country have found that it has no impact on the level of fly tipping, whether the charge is introduced or whether it's abolished. So I stand by that, but I can't answer the other part, and I can get that answer to you outside the meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Henry.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to thank the Cabinet Member for his reply. Is your work to also embed air quality into local health plan and the health and well-being strategy?
I thank Councillor Henry for her question on her supplementary. There's a very close working relationship between environment and regeneration and public health, and indeed between myself and Councillor Welton as the two Cabinet leads. And within the local plan, air quality will form a standalone part of it and make sure that it is embedded throughout. But equally, the Director of Environment and Regeneration is a very active member on the Health and Wellbeing Board, which is currently refreshing its health and wellbeing strategy. And part of that strategy is looking at place, and air quality will form an integral part of that. So it's very much embedded in both the local plan and the refreshed health and wellbeing strategy.
Thank you. Councillor Simpson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I thank the Cabinet Member for his 11-line answer to a very simple question, which was asking for a percentage, which, of course, he didn't find or give me. So, on the basis that he doesn't understand that particular question, perhaps he could understand the fact that pollutants generally derive from moving vehicles and not parked vehicles. So could he, because he can't answer the question, on the diesel tax, has it really made any difference in improving air quality in Merton? And will the Cabinet Member actually be honest and admit that this is really just a stealth tax on parked vehicles? And will he apologise again to those innocent residents who bought diesels thanks to encouragement from a Labour government?
Sorry, I think the question was misdirected in the first place. I defer to my Cabinet colleague, Councillor Byers.
Well, I'm grateful that he chastised Councillor Brunt rather than me. As the question, or as the response states, we are in the process of undertaking that review that was committed to within 2 years. And I believe the terms of reference for that review will be taken to the next scrutiny committee. And part of that will be looking at what we are actually measuring, because in most other boroughs that have implemented diesel levies, they have measured the reduction in diesel vehicles being registered through CPZs rather than any actual reduction in air quality. And I have to say, I find the Conservatives' opposition to the diesel levy baffling, considering that 57% of the pollutant that is created within the borough is attributable to road transport, and of that, a significant proportion is attributable to diesel. It's all in here. If you want to read it, you know, rather than focusing on leadership elections, perhaps you should focus on the substance.
Thank you, Member, and I thank the Cabinet Member for this response, and in particular for the assurance that he quote,
no material collected for recycling is simply incineration. In view of the importance of this to public confidence in our waste collection and the importance indeed that they should be recycled, can he use the skills of our comms department to get that message out there? In particular, I wonder if he can address the widespread belief that it is more profitable for Veolia to send materials for incineration than for recycling.
He's certainly one of the, I think Councillor Southgate's question and supplementary. Recycling is something that's been close to my heart for many, many years. And I have been the councillor that introduced paper and cardboard recycling across the borough back in the 90s. So I certainly take it seriously, and I make sure that it's happening. I think the best way to reassure the public is to start, when we have the audited figures coming through, is to start publicising the figures of what is going to the different waste streams in terms of paper and card, mixed dry recycling, food waste, garden waste, and the rest for landfill stroke energy exchange rather than incineration. I would correct him slightly. So I think that is the best way of doing it, but we constantly look at the communications we put out to promote that, and I reassure residents whenever I speak to them that what is put out for recycling is taken for recycling.
Thank you. Councillor Makin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Will the Cabinet Member update the Council on the recent tram-link consultation and outline the benefits to residents of Merton?
I'd like to thank Councillor Makin for his supplementary. The tram-link extension will have considerable benefits because we do want to improve public transport in this borough, and we do want to have less usage of cars and more usage of public transport. One of the routes goes through his ward, Cricket Green, and it would actually help in terms of accessibility. Likewise, there's another route to South Wimbledon, and another option was the Wimbledon to Sutton route. Tramlink has been an enormous success in the 20 years that it has been running. It has improved considerably access from Mitcham to Croydon and Wimbledon, and it's something that I welcome. Clearly, we want to see transport improve further, so we are working very closely with TfL in terms of the options that are available on the Tramlink extension. And I would like to mention as well that we've had over 3,000 people responding to the TfL consultation, people engaging across the borough. So there's many, many positives that do exist, but yes, we do want to see public transport improve further, and we welcome the Mayor having undertaken this consultation. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McLean.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I thank the Cabinet Member for the response. If the increase in public transport has been as successful as the Cabinet Member claimed, then why is the healthy living gap continuing to increase?
I'd like to thank Councillor McLean for his supplementary. In terms of the living gap, which he mentions, this is not just down to public transport, it's down to a whole range of other indicators in terms of education, health, poverty, and it's to say that you'll see in the answer that we want to bridge the gap. That's a key focus of us as a local authority, and actually one of our top priorities, because we do recognise that expectancy is 7 years higher in our most affluent wards compared to our most deprived wards. So that's why we would actually welcome the Tramlink extension. We think that will actually be something that will be of a bonus as well, and actually improving public transport. We have seen considerable improvements, and hopefully we'll see even further improvements in the years to come, now that we do have a Labour Mayor running under. Thank you.
Councillor William.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you to the Cabinet Member for the response. If air quality monitoring data around the site of the Harris Academy on Hyde Park does not improve to safe levels by the time the school is due to open, Will the council delay opening the school? The mean raw NO2 reading for the past year was 41, above the safe level of 40, peaking at 49.74 in January 2018. Thank you.
I'm confused by the question that's been asked there by Councillor Green, because the question is to me, but the supplementary does not relate to my brief at all. So I think that we need to arrange for a written answer to him of his question.
Councillor Barrow.
Residents in my ward are confused as they are across the borough. They've had new bins forced upon them at substantial cost and effort on the basis that they are wheelie bins. Yet they look outside their windows on collection day and see that they're not wheeled anywhere. With bags taken out of bins during collection just as they were before. Could the Cabinet member explain this?
I can assure the Councillor that I thank you for his question. That's supplementary. It's one of the areas that I've been talking to Veolia's management regularly about, because some of the teams, it seems, are still sticking to the practices more or less they have for the last 20 years. And so we are aware of that, we're working on it. We certainly do not invest in buildings to be just refuge storage in people's front gardens. It is to be operated and used. I am operating my own pilot at the moment. There's a pair of trainers in the bottom of my wheelie bin, and it's been there since Christmas, so I'm reporting that regularly to say the bin's not been tipped. So I am on the case and I'm following it up. It needs to happen. Because bags lifted out of bins will split, and therefore it negates completely the purpose of owning a wheelie bin.
And the final question, Councillor Griffin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. On air quality, will the Cabinet kindly commit going forward to publishing clearer data on air quality so residents can immediately see what the NO2 level is on their road without having to spend 50 minutes doing complicated cross-referencing across multiple documents? And will you also make sure with his Cabinet colleagues that all planning decisions where air quality is a factor going forward in our borough reference the proper local street, the NO2 levels and the PM particulate matter data, and that it's not 3 years out of date, so it's the current data as well on all future planning decisions? Thank you.
I'd like to thank the Council for this question, and again say that I think there's some confusion on your side because this question is not part of my brief, and we can organise an answer unless one of my colleagues would like to answer it now. We'll organise an answer. Wait.
Kerwin? Councillor Barrow? No? Shall we just move on to 7B, please? Strategic theme main report. We are now going to deal with the strategic theme main report. I'm going to invite Cabinet members to present and then seek a seconder. I will then invite any members that wish to speak on the main report to do so. After that, we take motions and vote on them. Finally, we will then vote on the main report. Councillor Byers, please present the strategic theme.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm pleased to formally move the strategic theme report on air quality. Madam Mayor, can I start by thanking officers from across environment and regeneration and public health for their work not only on this report, but on the significant progress that has been made in implementing the Air Quality Action Plan. We know that air quality in Merton, in common with nearly all other London boroughs, is poor, breaching the limits for both nitrogen dioxide and particulate matter. We know that air pollution is attributable to about 6.5% of mortality in Merton and associated with a number of adverse health impacts, notably heart disease and cancer. And we know that air pollution particularly affects the most vulnerable in society and is often worse in less affluent areas. And I think it goes without saying, Madam Mayor, that there is consensus across all parties of the need to tackle poor air quality. The differences that exist between us are over how to tackle it. The responsibility for this rests with government, at City Hall and here in Merton. Whilst we do not control every lever to improve air quality, it is important that we maximise the opportunities from the levers we do have. As the report makes clear, pollution originates from a wide range of sources, from both within the borough and from outside of it. pollution that originates inside the borough, nearly 60% is caused by road transport, of which the greatest proportion comes from diesel vehicles. That is why, Madam Mayor, this administration led the way 2 years ago with the introduction of the diesel levy, and is why we will shortly be consulting on increased parking charges to try and change behaviours, moving towards more sustainable and more active modes of travel. But Madam Mayor, our commitment to tackle poor air quality, as the report demonstrates, extends a long way beyond parking. The Air Quality Action Plan contains some 70 actions, the majority of which have been either fully or partially implemented. We led the way on tackling pollution on large construction sites, in a scheme that will shortly be rolled out across all London boroughs. We are a key partner in the school neighbourhood pilots approach, creating better environments around our schools for our young people. We have strengthened the links between planning and air quality, employing a new air quality officer out of revenue raised through the diesel levy to support planning officers. And we have installed anti-idling signage across the borough at schools, taxi ranks and level crossings, and next month we'll be running a number of anti-idling events with volunteers at children and primary schools. Madam Mayor, in addition to tackling pollution in Merton, we will continue to lobby government and TfL to play their part, pushing for a full vehicle scrappage scheme, greener buses and more connectivity to the east of the borough. Plans to introduce a new ultra-low emission zone in London are welcome, but will require careful monitoring, whilst the new powers mooted in the government's clean air strategy will need to be considered carefully against resourcing challenges. Madam Mayor, air quality won't improve overnight. It will take a fundamental shift in behaviour, not just in Merton, but across London and beyond, to have a discernible impact. Much of that is beyond our control, but that is why it is so important that we utilise the tools available to us in Merton to do our bit and continue to push for more action nationally. I commend this report to colleagues and formally move it.
This is being seconded by Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to thank Councillor Byers for this excellent report, and obviously not just Councillor Byers, but everyone in environment, regeneration, public health. And I think particularly people who last year were on the Sustainable Community Scrutiny Committee, which have put a lot of recommendations forward, as I said, many of which have been taken forward, and all those councillors from across parties who put in generally good ideas for how we can move forward in improving air quality in the borough. A couple of points I'd like to pick up from the report. It confirms that we are not just following other boroughs, but are a leading borough, not just in London, but across the country in our reaction to the challenges of air quality and what we can do about it. And important, as Councillor Byers says, air quality is not going to change overnight. The cars we drive are not going to change every night. At the moment, still the majority are petrol and diesel cars. In probably 34 years' time, maybe all will be electric cars. That's going to change gradually. We have 70 electric recharging points in the borough now. By the end of next month, that'll be over 100, and that will keep going up and up over the years as more and more people, as we hope, and will encourage more and more people to move to electric vehicles. We know that, and I can point councillors who've asked the question to page 17 of the report of 4.2, which lists the type of emissions, and that 90 or 80% of those are caused by diesel cars within the borough. And so that is one of the many good reasons we have introduced the diesel levy. When we own a diesel car, I'm a payer of the diesel levy. It's causing us as a household to seriously consider either changing to a non-diesel car or getting rid of our car altogether and using hire cars. That is just in our household. I'm sure that many houses across the borough will begin to reconsider owning diesel cars because of it. But the main thing I wanted to raise on the diesel levy, as the many ways has gone, as has been mentioned, to fund the air quality officer. And as a member of the planning committee, I look forward to when we are making our decisions on planning to have more information and be able to take more consideration to the issues of air quality when making decisions in planning. And I think that's an important thing of the whole report and the whole strategy, that it isn't just those two departments that are responsible for it. that it's across the whole borough. There isn't, and every department in the borough, there isn't an area where we don't have to consider air quality, and it should be something that the entire council does, not just these individual departments. I absolutely commend the report and urge everyone to vote for it. Thank you very much.
I have the following list to speak. Councillor Adam Bush.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, air quality is a subject that is of great concern to all our constituents and one which impacts all parts of our borough. Madam Mayor, the report states that 6.5% of all deaths in Merton are due to poor air quality. 6.5%, Madam Mayor, that is a shocking statistic. The Conservative side welcome the Air Quality Action Plan. However, Madam Mayor, we fear it will be the same old story of the administration who promised to improve and deliver nothing. The Conservative group first called for action to reduce emissions and particulates in July 14. July 14, Madam Mayor, and over 4 years later, we are still telling the administration to get their act together and improve air quality in this borough. Merton Council has identified more than 60% of nitrogen dioxide emissions come from road traffic. And to clarify for the benefit of the Cabinet, this is from moving vehicles and not parked cars. Madam Mayor, the response from this administration is once again to introduce a tax, a steel tax on parked cars that will do absolutely nothing for air quality and is only needed to raise finance and money to fill the gap in their finances due to their own poor mismanagement. Madam Mayor, we are entailed to ask, what has Labour achieved since 2010? Has Labour introduced bus zones that are low emissions? No. Have they improved public transport like this party did when it opened Mitcham Eastfield Station in 2008? No. Has Labour taken any action which has reduced emissions in the most polluted areas in our borough? No. All we get is the smog of Labour's smokescreen. Madam Mayor, this failure of Labour's administration has hit all our residents, but none more so than in their own voters of Mitcham and Morden. It's a disgrace, Madam Mayor, and they should be ashamed. Other boroughs have acted quickly and have seen great improvements. However, Madam Mayor, as always, this Labour administration is no action and attempt, but only to blame the government for something that they should have fixed years ago. Madam Mayor, it's obvious that this Labour cannot come up with a policy to improve air quality, so we suggest that they borrow our Conservative policy that has worked so well in Wandsworth to introduce low-emission bus zones, push polluting vehicles away from the public, and to take action now to improve air quality around our schools. Madam Mayor, we need a change to our borough now, not the same old dribble from Labour and a tax hike that won't help air quality. Their quality is poor and their record states as follows: no action to improve public transport, no action to protect our children from dangerous emissions, and no action to tackle the needless deaths in our borough. All talk and a total failure to get to grips with the pollution in our borough. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillors will know that the theme for this meeting was proposed by the Wimbledon group. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank officers for compiling the report we have in front of us. We chose this as our strategic theme because it is an urgent public health issue. Some of the key figures outlined in the report that have been touched on already make it clear that thousands of premature deaths are linked to poor air quality. And we know that particulate pollution in particular continues to breach World Health Organization guidelines across London. As such, I'm sure this issue, by the sound of it, This issue is close to all of our hearts. I have a young daughter myself, and we live next to a busy road. Recently she had to use a Ventolin inhaler for a bad chest infection. And I really don't want her to need one day to use one of those for asthma because of particulates or nitrous oxide, when it's clear that now we could be doing more on this issue. In fact, overall, despite point 7 of the report suggesting Merton is leading on this issue, the Council's response seems to fall short in several key respects. Now, unfortunately, there isn't time to touch on them all, but I think it is exemplified in the fact that the proposed steering group on the issue still hasn't even been set up. And as a result, our air quality strategy is in danger of careering wildly off course. The report itself is full of as yet unrealised ambition, rather than the concrete monitoring and evidence suggesting what the Council is doing is really having a real impact. Similarly, we find out in the amendment to our motion, which we will touch on later, that the Council is looking at a mini ULEZ. That isn't in the report that we have in front of us. Now, this isn't a matter of keeping the Council honest, more a matter of keeping it focused on this issue across all of its activities. And I think the LID motion we will discuss later perhaps could go some way towards that. I think clearly this is not just an issue for the Council. The government is doing too little. But here we all have a platform to execute and influence change. And I feel, looking at the report today, that we are still yet to use that to its full potential. Thank you.
There are no further speakers. Councillor Raynes, do you wish to use your right to reply?
Well, just briefly, Madam Mayor. I mean, firstly, the notion that we should be tackling TfL but not tackling diesel vehicles is completely undermined by the statistics. And if you also look at pages 4 and 5 of the report, you'll see that the contribution of TfL buses to emissions is far lower than the contribution of diesel cars. And if you then add petrol cars to that as well, it's significantly lower. And what I'd say to Councillor Willing is that nobody is saying that the Air Quality Action Plan is the finished article. We have implemented partially or fully the majority of the actions, but they're not going to yield fruit overnight. They need time to bed in. And one of the actions that we haven't yet implemented, as he identifies, is the group. That is in process, and that should be up and running very quickly. But it's not that this article is now, this report is now the finished document and we move on. The Air Quality Action Plan is a live document, and it will continue to be updated with further actions over the course of the next 3 years.
We now move on to item 7C, strategic theme motion at Liberal Democrats. Councillor Morden, please present the motion.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was very pleased when at scrutiny officers said that there was evidence that increasing parking charges would reduce the amount of vehicle use in Merton. And I asked to have a look at the evidence. And I was referred to 2 academic studies which allegedly show that. Madam Mayor, I've actually read the academic studies, and neither of them offers the slightest evidence that increasing parking charges for Merton residents will have any effect on traffic at all. In fact, one of them says, research appears to corroborate conventional wisdom that parking demand is inelastic in relation to price. In fact, Madam Mayor, there's actually no evidence at all that increasing charges in CPZ. A government study of various research in the area suggested this was an area where more research was needed because there was so little evidence. There's also the other side of the increases, of course, which is people travelling to our town centres who are also expected to pay more. Now, there is more mixed evidence here. There's certainly evidence that it has an effect, but the effect appears to be to encourage people to go elsewhere to shop rather than in our town centres. And it would be a triumph of policy making to persuade people that instead of coming to shop in Wimbledon and Morden, they go to Sutton and Kingston instead, which would be one of the effects of these charges. Madam Mayor, the parking charges were sent back through scrutiny to the Cabinet with a request that the Cabinet should receive additional evidence to demonstrate that parking charges result in a decrease in traffic. I'm sure we're all looking forward to seeing that. I feel rather sorry for the poor staff members desperately Googling to try and find some evidence of this. I did find some that it may have had an effect in Swedish ski resorts, but I'm not sure that's entirely applicable to Merton. Unless Labour is able to produce some evidence, this will reduce traffic. By the way, the Labour assumption is it will reduce parking, the number of cars in CPZs by 20%, which I doubt anybody believes. Unless they can produce some evidence, it will look like revenue raising. And councillors need to consider very carefully whether we're legally allowed to do that. I'd like to address one other point. The view that the owner of a dirty diesel who happens to live in Mitcham should pay much less for their parking permit than somebody who drives a small, clean car in Wimbledon. We've done a quick analysis, Madam Mayor, of where the burden of these new charges will fall. And they raise about £1.4 million a year, £1 million of which, 71%, will fall on people in Wimbledon, 12% in Raynes Park, Mitchell and Morden between them will be 5%. It's not, Madam Mayor, a tax on pollution, it's a tax on not voting for the Labour Party. Now, there is an amendment, a repeating amendment to this motion. It's factually incorrect and I'm not going to waste much time on it. Madam Mayor, if we really want to use parking charges to reduce air pollution in Merton, we should link the parking charges to the amount of pollution that the vehicles actually put out, not where the car owners happen to live. And that's exactly what the Lib Dem motion is calling for, and what my colleague, Councillor Fairclough, is going to talk about in more detail. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We've just heard from Councillor McGrath about the problems with this administration's interim parking charges scheme on court. We've also heard too from Councillor Quillian about the lack of focus and the unrealised ambition in the Civic theme report. And I think it's fair to say that the contribution from across the Liberal Democrat group tonight is consistent. There needs to be a clear link between the action proposed and the outcome desired. It's not good enough simply to say something needs to be done, this is something. We've got to actually look at success or lack thereof and how it's measured. So by law, Madam Mayor, the Council has a really clear objective to reduce pollution from nitrogen dioxide in particular. And we need effective action to cut the most polluting vehicles. As has been pointed out, parked cars don't pollute, polluting cars pollute. So I will make 2 points about the motion that we're putting forward. Firstly, all we're suggesting is actually what's envisaged by the current administration's air quality action plan. So maybe we can make a deal, maybe together we can get somewhere. As set out in the action plan, we're suggesting an emissions-based charging scheme where the polluters pay. As the most recent Cabinet paper says, there's a clear logic in this approach. It simply makes no sense to have this interim scheme that tries to force cars off the road rather than one that tries to encourage a switch to less polluting vehicles when a car is bought. The only reason we've been given as to why we need this interim charging scheme is that something must be done because it's an emergency. Well, yes. But let's actually get this right, Madam Mayor. Why doesn't the Cabinet bring forward the envisaged reviews and the software procurement that we need to get an emissions-based scheme in place this year? And even better, there's lots of evidence we can learn from. Many councils have these types of schemes, Richmond, Islington, Camden. We also have evidence from Merton's diesel levy to look at, and we need to learn these lessons. Secondly, we know that some people will need help switching to greener transport options. Many people bought diesels because the government advice said that they were better for the environment. And some people simply can't afford to get rid of their cars to buy newer, cleaner ones. So we need to look carefully at what we can do on scrappage, sunset periods to help mitigate the equality impacts. And that's what our motion requests. And from the strategic theme report, we know that pollution from through traffic plays its part, and there are several actions that can be taken to limit the number of high polluting HGVs travelling through the borough. We need to flesh out some of the things touched on by the report into definite action. Let's actually lead on air quality as the action plan sets out the ambition to do. The Mayor of London can be our ally in this. Looking at mini ultra-low emission zones is in the air quality action plan. We're slightly surprised to see in the Labour Group's amendment that they're announcing by amendment, but it's not in the report. Putney High Street have a low emission bus lane, has been mentioned by the Conservative group, which should be pushing for similar schemes here and now. So let's abandon this interim scheme, a tax on not voting Labour. Let's take some real action to cut the most polluting vehicles that people can get behind, that they can believe in. And we can start tonight. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
We have an amendment. Councillor Byers to move.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm surprised to hear it described as a wrecking amendment because I thought it was actually quite a harmless amendment that just sought to clarify a few points. And firstly, in relation to the Air Quality Action Plan, reviewing parking charges did form part of it, so perhaps he can notch that up as one of our successes. Madam Mayor, it's important that Council understands that the proposals that were taken to the scrutiny panel remain proposals at this stage. When Cabinet discussed this in December, it agreed to proceed to consultation on the proposed approach, not to implement the policy. That remains the case, Madam Mayor, and Cabinet will consider the proposal again in due course with the benefit of the responses from the public consultation. Madam Mayor, I'd also note, as has been noted, that when Cabinet discussed it last month, discussed the reference back from scrutiny, the recommendation for additional evidence was accepted and further work is being undertaken. And certainly the reports that I have seen to date suggest that there is a causal link between parking charges and alleviating poor air quality. Madam Mayor, all of this research will form part of the paper that comes back to Cabinet, and obviously colleagues from across the Chamber will have an opportunity to review it. The point he made about price elasticity, I think, is an important one, and that is also something that we'll have to consider with the diesel levy to look at how effective that has been and whether the pricing is right on that. But clearly there will be a causal link between the price that these charges are set at and the amount of people who are encouraged to switch to more sustainable modes of transport. Madam Mayor, the amendment also just sought to make clear that the Council already engages with City Hall and will continue to do so. We're very fortunate here to have Leonie Cooper as our Assembly member, who's Deputy Chair of the Environment Committee, so we liaise regularly with her at a political level, Madam Mayor, as well as engaging at an officer level. Thirdly, Madam Mayor, the amendment seeks to dispel this notion that the Liberal Democrats seem to be pushing, that tackling poor air quality through parking can only be done through the diesel levy and emissions-based charging. Madam Mayor, it should not be an either or. It is right that we look at emissions-based charging. It is right that we review the diesel levy in the spring. But as the strategic theme report showed, petrol emissions account for a significant proportion of the vehicle emissions as well. So it is right that we look at other measures to address that. These are not conflicting policies, Madam Mayor, but complementary ones. We are looking to use the tools we have at our disposal to both reduce the number of vehicles in the borough and to clean up those which remain. So a two-pronged approach is the right one. Madam Mayor, I certainly welcome the enthusiasm to explore emissions-based charging, and I look forward to working with colleagues from across the Chamber alongside Councillor Walton when we look at that in due course. But that does not mean we shouldn't be looking at other measures to tackle poor air quality in the meantime, and the parking strategy is an integral part of that. I formally move the amendment.
The amendment is being seconded by Councillor Raynes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I mean, this has certainly been an interesting debate because we as the administration regard poor air quality as one of the top challenges in the borough, given the number of premature deaths that are taking place, especially due to asthma, but also as well in terms of pollution. As an administration, we introduced a diesel levy, something which has now been followed by a number of other councils, including Conservative Westminster, which wasn't cited by the opposition. As Councillor Ward mentioned earlier this evening, 60% is due to diesel vehicles. There is clear evidence that diesels are one of the chief pollutants out there. We, as a Labour administration, are actually prepared to do something by it. So obviously I find it disappointing that it's not been supported
by the opposition parties. But then again, I'm sure they would oppose anything we put forward in terms of air quality. They're all talk, but actually no action. In relation to the Liberal Democrats, it was very interesting to hear from the Lib Dems. Again, like the Conservatives, they talk the talk, but weak in terms of action. We recognise the damaging effects that vehicles do in this borough in terms of emission. That's why we have put forward one of the most comprehensive reports in terms of emissions and parking charges that any borough in London has produced. And I'd like to pay tribute to the work of officers in that. You will obviously see in terms of the amendment, which I think improves the motion considerably, but also as well to make sure that we as a council take this matter seriously. I suspect the opposition just see it as in terms of the opportunistic aspects of it. In terms of the proposed charges, we've looked at these comprehensively in terms of the proposals. But as my colleague Councillor Byers mentioned, they are only proposals and are subject to a comprehensive consultation, because we do believe in residents' engagement as a Labour administration here in Merton. It's time as a council we do take action. This is a huge, huge issue here in Merton. I believe that we are adopting the right approach going forward. I ask Council to support this amendment, which I believe is a reasoned amendment in terms of the Liberal Democrat motion. Thank you, Madam.
I have the following listed to speak. Councillor Holmes.
Madam Mayor, thank you very much. Madam Mayor, we welcome the Liberal Democrat motion this evening, and we welcome in particular their comments that certain of Labour's policies need to be abandoned. We agree with the principle that polluters should pay, which is why we have fought hard for anti-idling measures. We also support an evidence-based approach, which is talked about by the Liberal Dems, and we also support low-emission bus zones and efforts to tackle solution from HGV. So we do support the motion this evening, but Madam Mayor, we're also quite disappointed that a motion that is thoughtful and well thought out it is being treated in the way that it is by Labour. Councillor Byers has engaged this evening in a completely different way to the proposed amendment. And we feel that Labour have done what they usually do, which is to water down a meaningful motion that is actually the business of the people of Merton. And it's now reduced to something that is not meaningful and doesn't contribute to any debate and that we can't support. So, Madam Mayor, we don't support everything that the Liberal Democrats bring forward by any means. But what we are interested in as a group is we are interested in engaging with what's brought to us. We are interested in looking at what's brought to us on its merits. And we are interested in debating what we feel is in the interest of the people of Merton. So we're disappointed that this evening Labour have chosen to do what, as I say, they always do, which is water things down, change them, and end up with something that's really pretty meaningless, which is a shame. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
There are no further speakers. Councillor McGrath, do you wish to use your right to reply?
Very briefly, please. Thank you. I'm a bit puzzled by the reference to these only being proposals, because the revenue from these increases, or some of the revenue from the increases, is in the council's budget. So what is going to happen if these proposals, in fact, don't get agreed, if it turns out that the Cabinet agrees that the evidence doesn't support them? Where are they going to find the extra money from? I don't think they're proposals at all. I think they're completely baked in. I'm fascinated to hear that there is evidence. I'd love to know which of the proposal, whether the proposal and the secretary of the motion have actually read any of it. I'm a bit surprised to read about Sutton and hear about the Dem councils not walking the talk, because our colleagues in Sutton have already introduced an emissions-based scheme, and I think the council, Merton Council, might do very well to have a look at how well that's working. So I'd like to ask members to reject the amendment and vote for the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I will now call for a vote on the amendment first. Can I have a show of hands in favour? Against? Those not voting? The amendment is being carried. 33 for, 26 against, no votes. I will now call on a vote on the substantive motion as amended. All those in favour? Against? Thank you. Is carried 33 for, 26 against, no votes. So we now move on to 7D. We will now consider the second strategic theme motion. Councillor Raynes, please present the motion.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So we've been listening tonight to people from all across the chamber talk about air quality and how seriously they're taking it, and it's really heartening to understand that. I'm not going to repeat all of the stats all over again. We've all heard about it, and people have spoken really, really passionately about it as well, so I'm not going to repeat them. We all agree we want to do better. And the report, thank you for the report, because you can see from there that there are so many good activities, and they all have the same aim to improve our air quality. As the Cabinet member mentioned, there's literally 70 recommendations, so I'm definitely not saying that it's not thorough. It's definitely thorough, thank you. However, forgive me, you've definitely heard this argument from our bench back here before. There doesn't seem to be enough evidence, there doesn't seem to be much clarity, and there really doesn't seem to be very many measures to make sure that these 70 recommendations actually work and are carried through. So one example that Councillor Quinley mentioned earlier about the air quality steering group, that hasn't yet been assembled. No matter how quickly it will be implemented, it's still not here, and that's wild to me. But anyway, so being a councillor and my day job in retail are actually not that different. One of the things my day job has definitely given me practice at is dealing with people who are not very happy with me. However, normally it's more about dresses and bins, but one example of the things I do at work a lot is appraisals, and when I do appraisals and performance reviews to my team, I have to give them measurable, time-bound goals. Otherwise, the whole process is completely pointless. No one sees any improvement. We need to have self-reflection. And I think that this is something that the report shows that we could definitely benefit from here. We need someone, one of us, to hold Merton to account. What we are asking for in this motion is for one elected member to be selected for the role of Air Quality Scrutiny Champion, who can work alongside the newly appointed Air Quality Officer. Let's have one councillor who is fully briefed, always ready, able to scrutinise, able to feedback, and someone who can keep on top of those 70 points. So I really hope that you'll agree with me on this and you'll vote for our motion. Thank you.
Seconded by Councillor Corner.
I'll reserve my right, thanks.
We move on to the Labour amendment. Councillor Ashworth to move the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I agree with the Labour amendment that it is the role of the whole of the Sustainable Scrutiny Panel to be the air quality champion. This council recognises that poor air quality is one of the contributory factors in poor health in the borough. That is why it set up a task group in 2017-18 specifically to look in particular the impact that poor air quality had on the health of its residents. The result of which is the Air Quality Action Plan. From the document, you will see that it clearly sets out its priorities. It is now the Sustainable Communities Scrutiny Panel's role as the air quality champions to scrutinise and ensure its implementation from land use planning and sustainable development, transport planning promoting sustainable transport, local transport management integration with local implementation plans, climate change policies in relation to carbon management and reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, low emission strategies providing an integrated approach to promoting emission reduction strategies covering both air quality and climate change, public health outcomes, policy areas to promote health and well-being, and education programs to promote health and well-being, and also the principles of sustainability. The Sustainable Communities Panel, as air quality champions, does not take its role lightly and looks forward to scrutinising future policies and decisions regarding air quality and the health of all our citizens now and for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I am seconding the amendment to this motion. As a relatively new member to this council, I'm being quite excited to be put on the Sustainable Communities Panel and all the opportunities it gave to me to look into the many tools that are available to us as a council to attack, as we've all agreed here, is a very big problem for the borough and the city. And I was impressed overall by the council's commitment, as we've heard already, the air quality officer is in the role, is accountable to the panel, and the opportunity that the Sustainable Communities Panel overall, as all champions of air quality, we can exercise. And I do want to keep to stay as an opportunity for all of the panel to be air quality champions and to the wider council as well. I don't feel that the way we operate in the panel diminishes if there isn't one person only responsible for it. I think that taking the responsibility from other members in the panel would actually diminish our scrutiny of it. So on that point, I'd just like to say that we all should be air quality champions. And as we've already seen, the ability for the Sustainable Communities Panel to create task groups and looking into every single tool we can use has already been put to good use, and I'm looking forward to another few months and hopefully another year of doing that with the panel. Just the end of the session.
I have the following listed to speak. Councillor Councillor Caller, do you wish to come back in?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Call me naive if you wish. I really thought this would be a non-contentious motion. Councillor Welton, sorry? Councillor Welton, you just described air quality as a public health emergency. Councillor Byers agreed with that. I prepared a speech lauding my fellow councillors, putting party differences to one side and recognising that air quality, like so many of the issues we deal with at council level, should transcend party politics. It was so much for my speech, I was going to throw it away. Just like you were about to throw away this opportunity to actually do something for air quality in this borough. Thankfully, for me at least, I wrote an alternative speech. Looking up for you. We're proposing, all we are proposing, to this council appoint one of us, and I'm talking to the backbenchers here, one of us to hold the cabinet, the council, the officers on this critical issue to account for your constituents. Yet again, as with my first ever motion on Wimbledon Police Station, we're told not to worry, everything's in hand, our esteemed leader has a cunning plan. What is it always? It's always leave it to scrutiny. Or to be more precise, in this case, leaves the Sustainable Communities Scrutiny Panel. Now, I have great admiration for the hard work Councillor Atwell does and her fellow members on the panel, so not criticism of them. But there's simply too much to be done. That panel has scrutiny responsibility for housing, environmental sustainability, energy waste, parks, environment, culture, sport, enterprise, employment, adult education, libraries, transport and air quality. Given the number of responsibilities, the panel has it any wonder that the strategic theme report says so little about scrutiny? It's relegated to the last page of the substantive report, where it seems most of the panel's input regarding air quality to be confined to the thorny issue of parking permits. The only positive recommendation from the panel that I could find in the report was the proposal to increase the capital spent on street trees, which, although not mentioned in the report, was rejected by Cabinet. The Sustainable Communities Scrutiny Panel alone is not the answer. We need an air quality champion to stand above the political fray and work with us to improve air quality in Merton. Such an appointment would transform scrutiny functions and engender the trust in scrutiny that I would suggest is lacking in Merton. I'm hugely grateful to the work that Peter and his fellow chairs do on scrutiny. And I believe what he says when he says scrutiny in Merton is better than in some other councils. But as we've seen during the budget process, scrutiny in Merton has room for improvement. If we really want to hold the Cabinet to account, its chairs and their appointment needs to be wholly independent of the council leadership. Scrutiny should be our eyes, and again to the backbenchers, it should be our eyes and ears, holding the Cabinet to account. But that requires trust on all sides. No one will set scrutiny free unless we are confident it will not be exploited for narrow partisan advantage. And what better way to begin engendering that trust than showing how effective and creative scrutiny can be than with the appointment of an air quality champion to help transform the air in Merton and the health of our children. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Around the meeting that all speakers need to be treated with respect. Please. Thank you. So, Councillor Ormerod, do you wish to speak?
Yes, please, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much for your motion. Again, as with my colleague behind me, we are willing to support your motion as well, and therefore I'll keep my words incredibly brief, if you don't mind. I have some writing prepared, but I mean I've been listening to everything that people have been saying this evening, and I'm a little bit confused in some areas. So back to Councillor Butler's point. About the air quality scrutiny champion being instead of the panel. I'd actually read it as well as, and so I was actually hoping that Councillor Miller could clarify that afterwards. And with that in mind, I mean I've also, by listening to Councillor Byers, when you talked about having a two-pronged approach and talking about a shift in behaviour, we need to understand the difference between moving cars and what stationary cars is, and how the diesel levy has actually reduced emissions by having that already in place. And then you mentioned about in terms of emissions-based charging in due course. But what does that mean? I'm not sure. It creates uncertainty. We need to have a timeline, just in terms of when things will take effect. So just in case I've not made myself clear, we will be backing this motion and look forward to discussing that at Sustainable Communities, and we may consider one of our group forward too.
If there are no further speakers, Councillor Bailey, do you wish to use your right to reply?
Yes, please, really quickly. So, just to clarify, yes, it is as well as the overview scrutiny. panel. I'm sorry, I really thought that was clear, but apparently not. As Councillor Kelly said, the Sustainable Communities panel covers such a huge range of topics that are all so important to all of our residents. This motion is to try and help them, give them focus on air quality, and I really want us to get it right, and I'm really surprised and quite disappointed by the Labour amendment. I think it's a shame. It wouldn't cost anything, and it helps the panel. I really don't know what there is to object to. Councillor Welton said that us Lib Dems oppose anything Labour do. I can only speak for myself, but feeling is quite neutral. Thank you.
I will now call for a vote on the amendment. Can I have a show of hands in favour, please? Against? Those not, thank you. Those not voting? The amendment be carried. 36 for, 23 against, no votes. Thank you. I will now call for a vote on the substantive motion as amended. All those in favour? All those against? Not voting? Being carried 36 for, 17 against, and 6 no votes. Thank you. We now move on to 7C, strategic theme motion. Conservatives. We will now consider the third strategic theme motion. Councillor Holden, please present the motion.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move in this Conservative group motion on air quality to helpfully suggest how to make the lives of our residents better. Air quality is of concern to residents of Merton and across London, as it featured on the BBC News at 10 last night. Our group welcomed the Council's approach last year to updating the Air Quality Action Plan and the work of the Sustainable Communities Overview and Scrutiny Panel. This topic continues to go on the public agenda, and we now even have active residents groups such as Sustainable Merton, Weather, Hayden's Road Residents, Wimbledon Society and others who are doing citizen science and monitoring of air quality. This is very much welcomed, and the Council should actively liaise with these groups to help improve the air quality in Merton. However, Madam Mayor, it is concerning to us that the healthy living gap between the east and west of Borough has not been diminished. Also, for the most part, air quality is worse in Mitcham and Morden and Wimbledon, with a notable exception of a few roads, such as Alexandra Road and South London Junction. So what is to be done? Well, we have some ideas as listed in the motion. This council would look at to target the worst air pollution areas in the borough, in conjunction with TfL, by creating low-emission bus zones. It is well known that dirty old buses emit large volumes of pollution, and this is not fair to pedestrians and cyclists travelling in their wake. This council should work urgently with TfL to get these bus routes cleaned up, just as the Concerted controlled the Brighter Borough of Wandsworth have done. The public high speed choking fumes from all those buses caused mayhem, but now nitrogen oxide emissions are down 87% and continue to fall. This is the sort of action an ambitious council should be doing here. And that's Madam Mayor. This administration has decided to use a big stick to beat the residents of Wimbledon and Raynes Park with their massive hike in permit fees and charges. And to boot, they provided no evidence whatsoever as to how this will improve air quality or improve the health of residents in Mitcham. A better, more tangible way to address the concerns of heavy car use in Mitcham and Morden is, as Councillor Bush mentioned earlier, is to improve public transport in Mitcham. and bring it up to a level like we have here in Wimbledon, where many people actually choose to use public transport even though they may own cars too. Taxing parked cars is not the answer. Now, the council could have achieved some quick wins too, but have dragged their feet. In particular, I refer to the anti-idling measures, which the council has only recently belatedly adopted after many years of lobbying from this Conservative group. Cracking down on idling taxis outside Wimbledon station and idling vehicles outside schools would make a huge improvement to the lives of residents in Hillside and the wider area. This could have been rolled out several years ago, like Wandsworth Council have already done in their area. Madam Mayor, this council should look to use incentives to encourage people to do more active travel, not just tax them. I move this motion.
Thank you. This has been seconded by Councillor Dean.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I do second this motion. Merton's Air Quality Action Plan has 70 action points, apparently. The reality is none of them seem to include any action. As Merton splutters into the 21st century, it continues to breach legally binding air quality limits for both nitrogen dioxide and particulate matter. Yet there is no action when action is required. This plan is a piece of paper. I did read it. I couldn't see what you were saying. And that's where it's all going to stay, on paper. You see, the Labour Party simply don't care about air quality, except for when they suddenly wake up and sniff the chance to tax or restrict the freedoms of ordinary people. In this instance, it's a haphazard postcode lottery parking tax. Labour's fake headline was a tax on pollution, but it will be imposed in areas with fresher air. Nitrogen dioxide limits are continually breached in Colliers Wood, Morden and South Wimbledon, yet the Reds decide to tax cars of private individuals based on which way they vote. So those in Wimbledon will be getting it in the neck. This parking fee, this tax, is actually an envy tax, a problem you suffer wholeheartedly. And it will not reduce pollutions in the parts of the borough where pollution exceeds legal limits. You will raise money, but you won't stop pollution. Now, across the UK, carbon emissions are falling, but Merton seems to be going in the opposite direction. Here are some real action points you can take. Action. It's claimed that a third runway will emit an extra 6 million tonnes of CO2 per annum, with potentially, if you've been to the meeting, 75% of all Heathrow flights flying over this borough. The figure today is just 25%. Now, what you can do is comment on that consultation. This council has not done that. You could stop feeding the Bedlington Lane incinerator. You could have purchased electric waste lorries and have more than just one sole electric vehicle. You could genuinely start funding a mass planting of trees. Your action plan does not plant a single additional tree. You could stop deliberately congesting roads. A Labour member said to me today, he said, congestion in this area is just terrible. What can you do about it? Please don't tell my leader, he'll throw me out the party. I won't, because I like that person more than him. So, the road layout was designed by the bloke who created snakes and ladders, and you use spy cams to fill up your pots of gold. And you could tell London's mayor that you want buses that don't chug out poisons, like Wandsworth did for Putney High School. What the people really want is to be treated consistently and fairly. If the council wishes to tax combustion engines, then do it for all of them. And if you really care about pollution, then target the poison black spots. Plant some trees there, relieve congestion there, encourage homeowners to use electric cars, and ensure schools prioritise local children within walking distance. In particular, this council, and it doesn't, should think about the people of Mitcham. For once, because their reality is emissions will go up, and they already exceed limits in Mitcham and Colliers Wood. Because you are adding emissions in those areas. Your plan is to tax people. It does not banish pollution. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. The Labour amendment, Councillor Pritchard to move the amendment.
begin with the story of a young girl that lived a few miles from here. Her name was Ella Kissy Deborah. Ella was not born with asthma, but unfortunately for her, she just lived 25 metres from the heavily polluted South Circular Road. Ella was 7 years old when she experienced her first severe coughing fit, and I'm sorry to say that it was the first of many. Over the next 3 years, she was admitted to hospital 27 times. Despite her illness, Ella was amazingly active. She took on everything in her path with persistence and positivity. She had a talent for sports, gymnastics, swimming and dancing. But Ella's biggest dream was to outgrow her asthma and become a pilot. Sadly, at the age of only 9, Ella had an asthma-induced seizure and died. The inquest that followed to death determined that her attack was probably caused by something in the air. And last year's report of the causes of her death concluded that without unlawful levels of air pollution, it is unlikely that she would have lived. The story of Ella is in itself enough to bring home the importance of air quality to the lives of our residents. But the issue is much worse than just one case. Poor air quality contributes to the early deaths of up to 40,000 people in Britain each year. In 2017, a report to the UN Human Rights Council raised concerns on effects of air pollution on vulnerable groups in the UK. This included a mortality, morbidity and disability risk to children. And recent research has shown that a total of 44 cities across the UK breached the recommended World Health Organization guidelines for air quality. These statistics tell me two things. First, that the Lib Dems were right to select this important topic as the theme for this meeting. And second, that the air quality crisis is a national issue. This is a view shared by the cross-party DEFRA Select Committee, chaired by a Conservative MP. They stated that illegal air pollution has escalated into a public health emergency on this government's watch. And knowing this, I was disappointed to see a Conservative councillor putting forward this motion, trying to apportion blame elsewhere. It is this Conservative government that in April 2015 had to be ordered by the Supreme Court to produce air quality plans. It is this Conservative government whose plans for air quality have been ruled unlawful multiple times by the High Court. It is this Conservative government that, despite admitting that more needs to be done, has chosen to spend over £500,000 fighting and losing air quality court cases rather than taking action. It is this Conservative government that is responsible for our poor air quality, and it is this Conservative government that is endangering our residents' lives. So it is for these reasons, Madam Mayor, that I welcome the focus on air quality tonight and agree that it is a key concern of our residents. But note that despite the significant action that has been taken by this Labour-led council to address these issues, it is the failure of the Conservative government to address air quality that is increasing discrepancies in life expectancy, that is increasing the incidence of childhood asthma, that is increasing the number of premature deaths, and that has caused a public health emergency across the UK. And it is for these reasons, Madam Mayor, that I propose the amendment as shown.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I formally second the amendment. Madam Mayor, at the risk of repeating myself, I'll confine my comments on this amendment to three areas: the use of PTAL ratings, the diesel levy, and schools. So firstly, Madam Mayor, the use of PTAL ratings and the difference between charges across the borough. In setting the proposed parking charges, 4 principles were followed, Madam Mayor: ease of access to public transport, air quality, areas of high congestion, and enforcement requirements. And in regards to ease of access to public transport, Madam Mayor, we need to recognise that access currently varies widely across the borough and is therefore an important consideration when seeking to change behaviour to more sustainable modes of transport. But that doesn't mean, Madam Mayor, that we don't want to work to improve public transport areas. Again, the two are not mutually exclusive. Madam Mayor, this approach of looking at PTAL ratings is no different to the approach with planning applications for new developments, where we will require them to be permit-free if they have high levels of accessibility to public transport. The second point I'd make, Madam Mayor, is on the diesel levy. And as I said earlier, I'm puzzled at the Conservatives' continued opposition to this. The strategic theme report makes clear that the biggest source of pollutant that originates in the borough is road transport, and the biggest source within that is diesel. It therefore makes absolute sense to pursue policies aimed at reducing the number of diesel vehicles in the borough, as well as continuing to lobby for vehicle scrappage schemes to help people move away from the most polluting vehicles. Madam Mayor, the Labour Mayor of London has taken action on this, announcing in December a £23 million scrappage scheme for the most polluting vans to support London's micro-businesses. He has challenged the government to match his commitment, and so far they have not. And Madam Mayor, the point that has been made repeatedly this evening about a tax on parked cars. Well, if parked cars never move, they are presumably redundant and therefore can be dispensed with entirely and incur no charges, tax or insurance. Finally, Madam Mayor, the motion makes reference to the new secondary school, and I would draw colleagues' attention to the significant action that the Council has taken and will be taking to work with schools to improve air quality for our children and young people across the borough. This includes working with schools on travel plans to encourage sustainable travel, auditing schools in the most polluted areas and providing mitigation, putting anti-idling signage up at a number of schools and running anti-idling campaign events at schools with our children and young people, stepping up parking enforcement outside of schools, implementing a new school streets initiative, and piloting the school neighbourhood approach, an innovative scheme that takes a holistic approach to improving the environment around our schools. Madam Mayor, there is clearly more that we can do and there is more that we will do, but it is important that we recognise the significant steps that have already been taken by this Labour administration. I formally second them.
There are no further speakers. Councillor Morden, do you wish to use your right to reply?
Yes, I do, Madam Mayor. We recognise the concerns expressed by Councillor Pritchard, and don't get me wrong, health is a very big concern of ours, but as we highlighted in our motion and our speeches, nothing has actually been done to actually bridge the health gap between the west and the east of the borough. And as I mentioned in my speech, most people in Wimbledon use public transport already, and they often only use cars once or twice a week or for longer journeys out of London. So I don't see why they should get rid of their cars just because the Labour Council are anti-motorist, anti-family, and just want to make life difficult. You haven't actually addressed the issue of pollution is only caused by moving vehicles. If people aren't really moving their vehicles much during the week, whereas more often they are in Mitcham, then that's not fair to residents of London. So until you address through traffic, buses, the lorries and everything else, and taxis in particular, all these people daily going round, then we'll have no truck with your arguments and we'll put our votes against your schemes. So we'll vote and continue to be against your parking tax and your diesel tax until such time as you can come up with a fair evidence-based approach that actually targets and improves air quality based on sound science and sound evidence. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. I will now call for a vote on the amendment. Can I have a show of hands in favour? Thank you. Against? And those, thank you. And those not voting? Carried, 36 for, 23 against, no votes. I now call for a vote on the substantive motion as amended. All those in favour? Thank you. Against? Thank you. Not voting? Carried. 36 for, 23 against, no votes. Thank you. Now the debate is finished. We'll move to vote on the substantive report. Is the report agreed? Okay, we'll move to the community reports. Raynes Park report. Councillor McLean.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I had the pleasure of chairing the meeting on the 6th of December. It was a well-attended meeting, and during the open forum, there was a presentation from the Friends of Morden Park, in particular about why the council signed certificate of completion for all works that Balcony Homes were required to do in Morden Park before transferring the freehold to the council. These works required the eradication of Japanese knotweed that has not been done as an ongoing situation. We also had discussion on waste collection, issues raised. New service included assisted collections not being transferred over, bins not being returned to residents' properties, new textile and battery collection not being available, and the large Veolia yellow bins being left in the area. We also had a presentation from Thames Water, Carl Ledbetter, in relation to flooding in the Abbots Avenue area, and he explained that was down to rubble, nearly 20 tonnes, being put in pipes. This is over a number of years, of course, but it's an ongoing problem. And we also had discussion about the town and centre development and railway, in particular with regards to encroaching shrub and damaged fence on platform 1 of the Raynes Park station. Thank you.
Councillor Holmes, would you report on
Madam Mayor, thank you very much. Wimbledon Community Forum, we've had over 30 residents attend. We've had a long debate on the Wimbledon master plan. We had a London Assembly report from our Assembly member, and we too also had a section on Morley Park, as well as our usual open forum. We were joined by 2 cabinet members, so thank you to them for joining us, and that's my report, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Right, we now move to item 10 on the agenda. The Council Tax Reduction Policy for Care Leavers. Councillor Ellison, please present the report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm very pleased to be moving this report and the recommendations. This council, and us as councillors, we are corporate parents for children who are in care. It's one of the great things that we have a chance and opportunity to do as councillors is to be corporate parents for these fantastic kids. However, when they become adults, they become responsible for a number of things, and they are, by their nature, generally some of the most vulnerable people within our community. And so what we have proposed to do as a cabinet, and we'd like you to agree to tonight, is to extend the policy that we already have in place for the poorest people in our community, that there should be an exemption from council tax. I know that the Conservatives want to increase taxes on our very poorest people, but we ask them on this occasion to allow for no council tax for the very vulnerable young people who have been in our care up until the age of 25. It's only a small measure from our point of view, but as a business-like and caring council, it's something that we feel is important, and we'd like our council to sign up to it tonight and ensure that our care leavers pay no council tax until they're 25.
Thank you, Councillor. Formally seconded by Councillor Andrews.
Yes, very happy to second that, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I have the following listed to speak. Councillor Williams.
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor. As Councillor Allison says, we have a continuing responsibility for care leavers up to the age of 25, and this report arises from the Children's Society's campaign. The scheme suggested is modest, affecting a handful of care leavers, and the recommendation is supported wholeheartedly by the Conservative group. Indeed, Madam Mayor, contrary to Councillor Allison's assertion, our support of the disadvantaged in Merton is undoubted. But this tweak tonight, which gives a nod at paragraph 29 in the report to the almost unique continuation of a council tax benefit scheme in Merton that's unchanged, is in itself unbusinesslike. And the council should have adopted our recommendation to have officers adopt a specific Merton scheme that could have taken account of this situation, instead of which this will be a manual process, which is not at all businesslike. Nevertheless, we support the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Raynes. Councillor William, do you wish to speak?
I'll be very brief. Really, it's just to say, to thank the Council and the Cabinet member for bringing this to the Chamber. The Merton Democrats wholeheartedly support this scheme, and similarly we support, unlike the Conservatives, the continuation of the council tax support scheme as well.
Thank you. There are no further speakers. Councillor Allison, do you wish to use your right to I will now hand over to the monitoring officer to do a roll call.
Councillors, because this is a report which impacts on calculation of council tax levy and collection, we have to do a roll call on it. If members could indicate whether they are for or against the recommendation. Councillor Akagina. For. Councillor Alan Brittis. For. Councillor Allison. For. Councillor Anderson. For. Councillor Atwell. For. Councillor Bailey. For. Councillor Barlow. For. Councillor Benbow. For. Councillor Bokhari. For. Councillor Braund. For. Councillor Brunt. For. Councillor Adam Bush. For. Councillor Omar Bush. Councillor Ben Butler. For. Councillor Byers. For. Councillor Christie. For. Councillor Chung. For. Councillor Cooper Marby. For. Councillor Kelper. For. Councillor Crowe. For. Councillor Dean. For. Councillor Dehaney. For. Councillor Draper. For. Councillor Fairclough. For. Councillor Foley. For. Councillor Fraser. For. Councillor Gretton. For. Councillor Henry. For. Councillor Holden. For. Councillor Holmes. For. Councillor Andrew Howard. For. Councillor Janice Howard. For. Councillor Irons. For. Councillor Mark Kenny. For. Councillor Sally Kenny. For. Councillor Kirby. For. Councillor Kohler. For. Councillor Lanning. For. Councillor Latif. For. Councillor Macaulay. For. Councillor Makin. For. Councillor McCabe. For. Councillor McGrath. For. Councillor McLean. For. Councillor Moulton. For. Councillor Mundy. For. Councillor Onrod. For. Councillor Pearce. For. Councillor Pritchard. For. Councillor Killian. For. Councillor Simpson. For. Councillor Skeet. For. Councillor Southgate. For. Councillor Stringer. For. Councillor Wade. For. Councillor Welton. For. Councillor Wilkinson. For. Councillor Williams. For. Councillor Stanford. Councillor Omar Bush.
That is carried 59 for and 1 not vote. No vote. So we now move on to item 11. Approval of pay policy statement agreed with members allowance scheme. Councillor Allison.
No, Mayor, there's a lot of business tonight and it's a routine paper that comes every year. Just move and defer my right to speak till later. Is that all right?
Councillor Bridges.
Yes, I second.
I have the following listed to speak. Councillor Williams.
Well, thank you, Madam. The details of the members' allowance scheme are not actually in the report tonight. So I just want to remind members that you receive an allowance of £8,694 per annum. Cabinet members get an additional full allowance in recognition of their special responsibilities, so 1 plus 1, and the leader of the council gets 1 plus 4. So, purely for illustrative purposes, Councillor Brunt will be able to receive £17,388 in the financial year to the end of the financial year, and the leader will be able to receive £43,470. Absolutely nothing to do with the resolution will come later in the extraordinary meeting, but we support these recommendations.
Councillor McGrath, you wish to speak?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Very briefly, thank you very much for the paper, which we'll certainly be supporting, and for the analysis on pay gap. It's now regarded as good practice not only to look at pay gap on the grounds of gender, but also on looking at any pay gap that might be between ethnic minority employees and white employees of the council. And I wondered when this paper comes to us next year, whether the Cabinet member could consider giving us some more data looking at that analysis as well.
Now, further speaker, Councillor Alston, do you wish to use your right?
I'm sorry that perfectly routine paper has been used to score ridiculous political points. But as we're about to discover, the Leader of the Opposition also receives more than £17,000, and I think we're experiencing tonight that the next Leader of the Opposition is clearly not going to be worth any of that money. That's all.
As there are no further speakers, I call for a vote. Is that agreed? Item 12, appointment of an independent person. Councillor Ellison, will you formally move this?
I formally move this as well.
Second by Councillor Bridges. Following listed to speak, Councillor James Howard. As there are no further speakers, I call for a vote. Is that agreed? Agreed. Item 13, calendar of meetings 2019 to 2020. Councillor Ellison, will you formally move this report?
I formally move.
Councillor Alan Bridges. I have the following listed to speak. Councillor Morden.
I'm formally moving myself. I have no further comment to make on this company. Thank you.
As I have no further speakers, I call for a vote. Is that agreed? Agreed. Item 14, changes to membership of committees and related matters. Councillor Ellison, will you formally move this report?
Yeah, I formally move. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Bridges.
Agree and formally second.
I have the following listed to speak. Councillor Simpson.
Nothing bad.
Councillor Ellison, would you like to use your right to reply? No. I'm just doing some talk. As I have no further speakers, I call for a vote. Is that agreed? Item 15. Petitions. Councillor Ellison, will you formally move this report?
Yeah, I formally move, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Britton.
Yes, I second, Madam Mayor.
Please bring forward any petitions that you wish to submit. Any petitions? No. There are no further petitions. That agreed? Now we are at the final item. Can I ask Councillor Alan Ritters to put forward the strategic theme for the next ordinary meeting of the Council on the 3rd of April 2019?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. That will be on children and young people, with an emphasis on our excellent schools and schools to be. Thank you.
With no further business, I declare this meeting of the Council closed.
Thank you.